And the Illuminatus with Starla, the outdoor edition. Yes, Starla has been cooped up for 3 days because the weather's been rainy and horrible. And so she's very excited to be out here, but she may come by and rest assured she's here. So, anyway, here we go. Not one drop of the precious blood of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. This is Robert Putney Drake harassing a street preacher. We just said that. And then Drake says, I see. And was that A, B, or O? And now it switches characters. John Hoover Dillinger lives in Mad Dog under the name DJ Hoover. He's not above letting people suspect he's a distant relative of J. Edgar's, mostly, John Judd said. He's retired, except occasionally for little jobs like helping arrange convincing jailbreaks, say, when Jim Cartwright wants to let a prisoner get out in a realistic fashion. He gave Naismith the idea for the John Dillinger Died for You Society. How about the other two? George asked, thinking that it would be even harder to decide whether he loved Stella more than Mavis, or Mavis more than Stella, now that he knew they were the same person. He wondered how Joe felt, since he obviously dug Miss Mao Susi, and she was that person also. 3 and 1 and 1 and 3, like Dillinger. Or was Dillinger 5 and 3? George realized suddenly that he was still tripping a little. Dillinger was 5 and 1, not 5 and 3. The law of fives again. Did that mean there were 2 more in the Mavis Stella Mao complex, or 2 that he hadn't met yet? Why did 2 and 3 keep popping up in all this? What's up, Go? What do you have? I don't want to know. Starla is running around with something in her mouth that I don't want to know what it is, and hope she gets rid of it. Alright, back to where we were. The other 2 are dead, John said sadly. John Edgar Dillinger was born first, and he went and died first. Fast and furious he was. It was him that plugged that bank guard in East Chicago, while the rest of us were vacationing and laying low in Miami. Always the hothead, he was. Had a heart attack back in 43 and went to an early grave. John Thomas Dillinger went in 69. He was in Chicago in 68 on a jam assignment, meeting with a crazy English spy named Chips. British intelligence somehow got a report that the Democratic Convention was being run by the Bavarian Illuminati and would end with an assassination. They didn't believe in the Illuminati, so they sent Chips. They always send him on wild cases because he's nutty enough to take them seriously and do a thorough job. Both of them got tear gassed coming out of the Hilton Hotel, and poor Chips got thrown in a paddy wagon with a bunch of young radicals. John Thomas had a chest problem already, a chronic asthma, and the tear gas made it a lot worse. He went from doctor to doctor and finally passed away in early 69. Starla's back without that thing in her mouth, thank God. So there's a cop in Chicago who could boast that he really killed John Dillinger, only he doesn't know it. Isn't life peculiar? The Sauer family only thought they were in the Illuminati, Hagbard went on. Hitler and Stalin only thought they were in the Illuminati. Old Weishaupt only thought he was in the Illuminati. It's that simple. The moral of the whole story is, beware of cheap Occidental imitations. He smiled grimly. I think it's beginning to penetrate, Joe said slowly. It was, of course, the very first hypothesis I formed. There have been many groups in history who called themselves the Illuminati, and they weren't all aiming at exactly the same thing. Precisely, Hagbard puffed again at his cigar. That's the natural first suspicion of any non-paranoid mind. Oof, Starla. Starla's very dirty, and we're going to have to secretly clean her up so that Michelle doesn't insist that I give her a bath. As you can see, she is very dirty. But we're going to not say anything about that. You have dirt all over your face, girl. Good Lord. You even have it on your tongue. Yuck. Golly. Go clean yourself up. Precisely, Hagbard puffed again at his cigar. That's the natural first suspicion of any non-paranoid mind. Then, as you explore the evidence, links between these groups begin to appear. Eventually, Their paranoid hypothesis begins to appear more plausible, and you begin to believe has been one Illuminati, using the same basic slogans and symbols and aiming at the same basic goal. I sent Jim Cartwright to you with that yarn about 3 conspiracies: the ABC, or Ancient Bavarian Conspiracy, the NBC, or New Bavarian Conspiracy, and the CBS, or Conservative Bavarian Seers. As you can see, they're also TV stations. To set you thinking that the truth might be midway backwards towards the simple first idea. From here on in, forget that I represent the original Illuminati. In fact, in recent centuries, we don't use a name at all. We employ only the initials AA, written like this. He sketched in a Donnell Hotel matchbook book. AA. A lot of occult writers, he went on, have made some amazing guesses as to what that means. Actually, it doesn't mean a damn thing. To prevent our name being stolen and misused again, we don't have a name. Anybody who thinks he's guessed the name and tries to pass himself off as an initiate by declaring that we're really the Atlantean Arcanum or the Argentium Astrum or whatever immediately reveals that he's a fraud. It's a neat gimmick, Hagbard intoned gloomily. I only wish we had thought of it centuries earlier. Noisy day out here. The buzzer on the president's secretary's desk buzzed as Saul and Barney passed through the outer door. The secretary flipped the switch, and the president said, "Find out the highest medal a civilian can get in order to, on my signature, for those 2 detectives." "Yes, sir," the secretary said, scribbling. "And then ask the FBI to check out that older one. He looked like a kike to me," the president said shrewdly. And now switching characters again to this crazy lady who's on acid. "No, because I'd be a fool to think miracles can occur in this world before somebody pays the rent and the taxes and shows that their papers are in order. And the people who are running it can always tell you your papers are not in order. No, because there are no magicians, and even Hagbard is mostly a fraud." I think this is Stella Maris. "And a con man, even if he means well. No, because I'm not Pope Joan, if there ever was a Pope Joan. No, because like the song says, I'm not a queen, I'm a woman, and the wrong color woman to boot. No, because there will be rivers of blood, and the earth will be shaken before we can overturn Boss Charlie, because it isn't a simple, one-night symbolic Armageddon, like Hagbard fooled them all into thinking. No, because Hagbard is some kind of magician, and put us all on his own trip for a while, but the real world isn't a trip, it's a bummer. No, because the lovers don't live happily ever after. After what happens is that they get married and get into debt and live in slavery ever after. And I've got to find something better than that. No, because none of us are driving the car, it's the car that's driving us. No, because it's like that old joke, balls, said the queen. If I had them, I'd be king. And nuts, said the prince. If I've got them and I'm not king. I've got them and I'm not king. And crap, said the king. And 30,000 royal subjects squatted and strained. For in those days the king's word was law. Hagbard would call it anality and sexism and ageism. But it just comes down to the women and children getting all the crap right in the face, and a few males owning everything. The truth is all in the old jokes, especially the bad jokes. I'm still tripping, but this is true. They can always say your papers are not in order. No, because sometimes you've got to be a hermit, and then come back later when you're together. No, because the wheel keeps spinning and doesn't give a fuck. If there's going to be any change, it's got to be that some human being somewhere does give a fuck. No, because I've never found a way to shut Simon's mouth and make him listen. No, because Jesus Christ was a black man, and they've even lied about that. He was another black man they killed, and they won't admit it. No, because death is the currency in every empire, Roman or American or any other. All empires are the same. Death is always the argument they use. No, because the whole world can go to the devil. And I'm taking care of Mary Lou. No, because look at that professor they killed at the UN building, and none of them arrested yet. No, because there's a perpetual motion machine inside me, and I'm learning to let it run. No, because I'll put a curse on all of them, and I'll burn them and I'll condemn them. I'll have the world. No, because look what happened to Daddy and Mommy. It's grade 5 and moving up towards 6, Igor Beaver shouted into the phone. You idiot, don't you think I can tell that from here? Dr. Troll shouted back. My bed was bouncing around like it had St. Vitus dance, even before you called. His emotion was merely professional anger at the student's failure to obey orders. Grade 5 is nothing to get excited about if you're a Californian, and even grade 6 causes anxiety only among tourists or believers in the famous Edgar Cayce prophecy. John Herbert Dillinger, one of those believers, was already in the garage, pajama tops tucked into hastily donned trousers, barefoot on the starter. But Smiling Jim climbed blissfully upwards, enjoying total communication with nature. The mystic rapture of the true hunter before he gets his chance to open fire and blast a chunk of nature to hell. You may mock and you may jest, but at the last judgment, the smile will be wiped off your face. All right, Mama Sutra's watching him from the window. This is back to Robert Putney Drake. He's heckling the preacher, Mama said. A small beginning, certainly, for the kind of destiny he seems to be choosing. He's heckling himself, the Dalai Lama pronounced. Christianity, rightly understood, is an encounter with death. He's still struggling with that problem. He wants to believe in the symbolism of the resurrection, but he can't. Too much intellect, King of Swords, keeping the reins on his intuitive Prince of Wands aspect. Well, maybe, Drake said calmly, but suppose he was type A. Now, if he got a transfusion at the last minute... Then back to Smiling Jim, who was trying to kill this eagle. The nest was in sight. The bird was invisible, but Smiling Jim recognized the characteristic eagle's nest on a peak only a few hundred yards above and to the west. Come home, baby, he thought passionately, unstrapping his rifle. Come home. Daddy's waiting. Hagbard took another belt of the brandy and repeated, the Sours were not Illuminati. Neither were Weishaupt or Hitler. They were frauds, pure and simple. First, they deluded themselves, then they deluded others. The real Illuminati, the AA, have never been involved in politics or in any form of manipulating or coercing people. Our interests are entirely elsewhere. Do what thou wilt is our law. Only in the last few decades, as the fate of the earth seemed to be hanging in the balance, have we taken any direct action. Even so, we have been cautious. We know that power corrupts. We have acted chiefly by not acting, by what the Taoists call wu wei. But then things got out of hand. They moved too fast. We fucked up somewhat, but only because total inaction seemed to mean total disaster. You mean you, as an official of some sort in the AA, infiltrated the fake Illuminati and became one of their top 5, intending to undo them non-violently, and it didn't work? It worked about as well as any activity on that level ever works, Hagbard said somberly. Most of humanity has been spared for a while, and the wild, free animals have been spared for a while. He sighed. I guess I'll have to begin from the ABCs. We have never sought power. We have sought to disperse power to set men and women free. That really means to help them discover that they are free. Everybody's free. The slave is free. The ultimate weapon isn't this plague out in Vegas or any new Super H bomb. The ultimate weapon has always existed. Every man, every woman, and every child owns it. It's the ability to say no and take the consequences. Fear is failure. The fear of death is the beginning of slavery. Thou hast no right but to do thy will. The goose...
Why are you letting that dog outside?
She wanted to be out here.